Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I've got Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for spending this time with us today. We are going to have a great show today. We're going to be talking about Evangelicals. We're going to be talking about Evangelicals. If you're just joining us now, please remember there's one thing that I'd like to ask you to do before you do anything, and that is to begin by sharing this on Facebook. I want to ask you again one more time, please go ahead and share this on Facebook. That is how we ensure that everybody is going to be listening, and that those who need to be, whose attention we need to get, will get as well. So please go ahead right now. First thing to do is to please share this on your wall. Share this anywhere that you have the opportunity to do so. Let's see here. Now, anyhow, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to have a good show. I read an article today that really got to me. It had to do about the White Evangelical and exactly why it is that they're continuing to support Donald Trump as they're supporting Donald Trump. And it, the article kind of pointed to a few things that things that I didn't quite, you kind of know, but you don't particularly know exactly. And that's what we had out of this article. But it's a very important article. But anyhow, before we even go to the article, or before we go to what we're going to talk about today, interesting things happening right now. We find out that the Democratic Party is going to be suing Donald Trump about what occurred in the 2016 election. Question to you guys: do you think that is a wise use of our time? Do you think that we should even be concerned about suing in this regard? I don't know. I have. Let me tell you a lot of how I feel right now. I think there's a whole lot of stuff that went on in the 2016 election, and I wish, for all practical purposes, that we'll simply forget about 2016, learn from not taking folks for granted, and moving on, because I don't really see that spending an inordinate amount of time going to lawyers and suing, etc. I don't have a clue what that's going to do. I have an interesting that I told people a whole lot of times, and that is, here's the reality. The reality is everything that the Russians did for Trump to win in the places he needed to win, Hillary Clinton and everybody else could have done that as well, right? In other words, yeah, there are a whole lot of bots that are running on Facebook to stuff bad information to people. Well, we could have gotten a whole lot of good information sent on Facebook to these people to mitigate that bad information. Reality is that for all practical purposes, it wasn't a best campaign that was run. And I think we need to get to the point where, look, we know that the election wasn't fair in regards to how things were done, but the outcome from the election didn't have to be the way it was, irrespective of what the Russians did, which I think they did a lot. I think they did a lot to influence the election, but the left side did a lot to influence the election so that the left side didn't win. One big example that I think people need to know about, and I think many already know, is that Facebook did offer each campaign to embed people within the campaign to help them best use Facebook. One campaign accepted that, the other didn't. Donald Trump accepted the help from Facebook, the Hillary Clinton campaign did not. So there are a lot of things that yes, Russia helped more than likely. And folks, if you're just joining us, please go ahead and share the show so that we can get more people joining on Facebook Live, as well as Blog Talk Radio. Please go ahead and tweet this so that folks on Blog Talk Radio will know that we are currently on as well. But there are a whole lot of things that could have been done differently, and we didn't do them as we should have done them. So suing is fine. I wouldn't, I would not have done that. I want to have nothing to do with that. I think all our efforts should be spent on reaching communities that we have not touched, going into communities and spending the monies that we would spend on lawyers to sue. Because I tell you something that drives me crazy. If you take a look at the budget that, let's say, Hillary Clinton had to spend, and spending a whole lot of this money on advisors and analysts and these different types of folks that, from all practical purposes, failed, that money would have been much better spent going into neighborhoods all over this country, Latino neighborhood, black neighborhoods, Asian neighborhoods, underrepresented neighborhoods who generally don't vote. Instead of putting that money in high-priced consultants, these money should have been right back into these neighborhoods. But what you're going to notice a lot of times with these elections, and specifically on the progressive side, is you're awash in consultants, and there are a whole lot of people telling you what to do who don't know what the hell they're talking about. They have never said, let me go into the church in the barrios. Let me go into the church in the neighborhood. Let me go into some of those churches, those little Timbuktu churches in Appalachia. They've just ceded those. They've ceded those to non-voting, to non-votes, meaning they've ceded those locales to people who don't vote so they don't worry about them, or they've just assumed that Appalachia is far gone and therefore they're not going to expend any efforts there. So these people, for all, these people are left behind. The barrios, the ghettos and Appalachia, all of them are left behind. And until we learn that lesson, until we learn the lesson that forget about what Russia did, we can make the affirmative case to go out there. I made mention in the show that I did at KPFT yesterday. We should make the affirmative case of why people should vote for us. And before I get with the program, that I probably should be talking about that affirmative case that we should be making. And I didn't pull it up here, but I'm going to try as I'm speaking here to get to that affirmative case, because suing that person in Timbuktu barrio, they don't know anything about suing or what they're going to get out of us suing for something. They don't know what's going to come out of that. What do you think that guy in Appalachia is going to think about when he's thinking about, oh, the Democratic Party is suing because of what Russia did? Or the person in the ghetto, the Democratic Party is suing. How is that going to help me? What is the Democratic Party going to do differently by suing Trump on the help he got from Russia? How is that going to help me? And I don't see it. So already I can see us doing a whole lot of things to ensure that if we win in November, it's not as big as it should be, because we're not allocating our resources in a manner that best suits us. Right now we should be attacking the web with these 5 points, and I have an additional point that I had to make on this based on some information, some good advice that I got from callers to the show at KPFT yesterday. But here are the 5 bullet points. Democrats will fix the health care issue once and for all with a single-payer Medicare for all system. Democrats will provide student loan relief. Democrats will provide need-based subsidized child care for anyone who wants to work. Democrats will decriminalize marijuana and treat drug use as the disease that it is. And Democrats will make the criminal justice system live up to the justice is blind motto. Express that in any form you want to express it in. Any form that you want to express it. Those 5 points. But what those 5 points do is they make sure that they touch every demographic, they touch everybody's personal economy, and they ensure that people see a reason for voting Democratic. Now, a caller called in and made an important point. He wanted to say, Egberto, that sounded like you're just saying government doing for you, but what about doing for yourself? Which the paragraph that follows that, I modified to say the following. Those 5 bullet points expressed in different terms will work in every district in America. That message appeals to millennials, people of color, all working class people, parents, and every demographic in between. One would hope that every demographic who gets on Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC, HLN, or any other network would steer every topic to these bullet points. Republican will ultimately get on the defense. Actually, I am reading the old copy. I don't have the new copy, but the new copy said, those particular bullet points, what it'll do, it'll give you the freedom so that you can do one. If you wanted to open your own business, those 5 bullet points ensure that you have the freedom to do so. If you want to go ahead and work for somebody else, or you want to work, whether you are filled with, have a whole lot of kids or not, those bullet points address you. Whatever it is you want to do in life, if your government is going to tell you that if you want to go to college to become a doctor, if you want to go to college to do something else, those 5 bullet points touch every aspect of your life. You know, we always talk about keep it simple. One of the things that progressives and Democrats usually have is we have long-winded stories to tell. We tell a whole lot of stories in a long-winded form, and we have all these things that we subdivide things into. Notice here, I didn't have to specify race. I didn't have to specify gender. I didn't have to specify any of these things because every one of those 5 topics covered everything. Every one of those 5 topics ensured your freedom. Every one of those 5 topics ensured that you can work if you want to. Every one of those topics ensure that you can go to school if you want to, if you can have kids if you want to. And there's a social justice system that is blind. So therefore, no discrimination. We work toward a justice system that does not tolerate discrimination by following those 5 tenets. Those 5 tenets expressed in bullet points, in memes, and you don't. I'm not necessarily using the words that I use, but in memes that is district specific. Those 5 points. What is electing a Democrat going to do for me today when I go to that poll? If they can, everybody can respond to those 5 points and realize that those 5 points touch every single demographic, and it touches it in a manner that you don't have to say we're pitting anybody against anybody. Those are the things I think we have to do if we are to win, and those are and there's no compromise there. There's opening it up for everybody. And when people start to ask you how you pay for it, I explain that in the article as well. But anyhow, what is the show going to be about today? Title of the show today is Professor's Explanation About Evangelical Support for Trump, the best analysis to date. It's the best analysis that I've seen to date. Subtitle, it turns out the evangelical pathology is nothing new, just one now exposed. And continuing, I say, sometimes one runs across an article that makes you just want to say, bingo, that's it. I ran across one of those articles today, and I want to share it with you, of course, with a politics done right angle. You see, if we understand the pathology of the white evangelical, we can, like a viral bomb, work on mitigating their destruction or even changing their minds. It is important that we share these types of programs, however, and articles with those who believe that simply calling themselves evangelicals make them moral. It does not. In fact, their actions say otherwise. Folks, if you're just joining us, please remember to share the program. It is imperative that we share the program to ensure that other people know we're on, to ensure that the algorithm from Facebook picks us up, and make sure that it gets into the feeds of others. Because as it is right now, and as I've explained many times, what's occurring right now is what I call the big throttle down. And the big throttle down is where Facebook has suddenly stopped. What is the word that I want to use? They're no longer. How should I say this? They don't. What's the word? They don't allow your program to be shared like it used to be shared. In other words, you just have to fight to get all the folks to see it. Anyhow, before I get the blog of the week, I want to remind folks that this is a call-in show. To reach us, you can give us a call at 646-716-5812. Again, that is 646-716-5812. I would love to hear from you guys. I would love for you guys to call in and start, being a part, call in and tell us what you think. Call in and let us know that you're listening. Call in and let us know that you really want to hear what we're talking about. Because what happens a whole lot of times is people simply just don't know that we're here. People simply don't have a clue that we're here. So what we're trying to do going forward is to make sure that folks know that The program is here, and not only is the program here, but we're coming to you. Okay, let me go ahead. I forgot to put the program in one particular place, so bear with me as I get the program on one of our pages here on Facebook that where it needs to be, because for some reason I don't think I placed it there. So, and then we'll go ahead and continue. There we go, and I think that is it right now. Anyhow, folks, before I go into the blog of the week, you know I have to make my first pitch, and that pitch goes this way. Please do remember that this is a progressive show, and as a progressive show, we do require, in order to keep doing this, we need to get your support. Getting your support, meaning going to patreon.com/politics done right. Again, that is patreon.com/politics done right. Buy us a coffee, and we'll continue doing this. We'll continue scouring the country for progressives. We have quite a few more on the list. The particular professor who wrote the article that we're going to discuss today, we came this close to putting him on today, but he couldn't make it at the 3 o'clock time. So more than likely we'll get him some other time in the week where he can express in his own words and with his professionalism, with the things that he knows, why it is that he believes what he believes. But again, support Politics Done Right by going to patreon.com/politics done right. But folks, do you know what time it is?
It's time for the weekly blog post.
Okay. As I mentioned before, the title of the blog is "The Grotesque Caricature of the White Evangelical is Real." And I can't claim originality for that title because I just kind of broke that title down from the article from this professor in Georgia. And here it goes. Most are apoplectic about the white evangelical durable and cult-like support for Donald Trump. Some see their current morality as self-serving as a self-serving new thing to get the judges they want. The evil emanating from their movement is neither new nor should it be surprising. It's neither new nor should it be surprising. Hollis Phelps, professor of interdisciplinary studies at Mercer University in Macon, Georgia, wrote an article titled, "Maybe It's Time to Admit That the Grotesque Caricature of White Evangelicals is the Reality." Folks, for you just joining the show, I'm asking you to share this on your wall now. This is an interesting analysis of the white evangelical that I think explained will help you talk to your relatives, your friends, your families who have these tenets, if you will. So again, if you're just joining us, please go ahead and share the show on your wall. Just do a share on the show here, and let's get moving. But anyhow, Hollis Phelps, professor of interdisciplinary studies at Mercer University in Macon, Georgia, wrote an article titled, "Maybe It's Time to Admit That the Grotesque Caricature of White Evangelical is the Reality," where he examines the pathology. It is likely the best analysis of the reality of the evil that has always been a part of the sect. And notice I said that the evil that has always been a part of the sect. He wrote the following, and he said it this way: "There is no doubt that evangelicalism seems to have an image problem, especially since its overwhelming alliance with Trump. In the minds of many outside the fold, evangelicalism no longer represents a specific religious position centered on sin and the need for individual salvation, but rather a self-serving, power-hungry political movement that will side with the devil himself for the sake of political pragmatism." When people say, "What does it mean to be an evangelical?" people don't say evangelism or the gospel. Birdsall told the Washington Post. But this image problem isn't new. Although polling shows that overall feelings towards evangelicals as a religious group have remained relatively stable since 2014, the perception of evangelicals as agents of intolerance, to quote John McCain back in 2008, well predates the Trump era. That's the thing that we have to get abreast of. A lot of us, there are times that I had articles where I prefaced all the articles with the phrase, not Trump America, but the Trump effect. I would always talk about the Trump effect, the Trump effect, the Trump effect. And I still talk about the Trump effect because in as much as none of this evil started under Trump, because remember the moral majority and Jerry Falwell, it predates Donald Trump. What, however, is true is Donald Trump made it vogue. Donald Trump made it okay to be all the bad things in public, visually, verbally. He made it okay to be bad. The fact remains that over 80% of self-identified white evangelical voters cast their lot with Trump. Moreover, despite a host of missteps and scandals, overall evangelical support for Trump as president hasn't declined. It hasn't declined. In fact, it has actually grown. It has actually grown. So, folks, Phelps posits the pretext that the white evangelical uses to support Donald Trump and turns it on its head. He turns it completely on its head. He said, given the consistency with which white evangelicals as a whole have lent their support to Trump and right-wing candidates and policies more generally, it's far past time to own up to the fact that the image is, in many respects, the reality. Think, how could they possibly have supported Roy Moore, a pedophile? Somebody that provably had problems with young women. How could they have still supported him if there wasn't some sort of a pathology that went beyond just that one election? And I think that is pretty much what the author of this piece is saying. And he says as follows: well-intentioned evangelical leaders may not like to hear that, but it remains the case that an overwhelming majority of evangelicals continue to support Trump and his policies. Sure, they may have issues with his moral center or lack thereof, but they're willing to overlook all of this for the sake of political expediency, for promises of religious freedom and the hope of a judiciary stacked with conservative judges. Whoa. This is because at the end of the day, evangelicalism isn't really about personal values, but rather social and political conversion and control. So it's just another political party. It's just another political tenet. In other words, there's nothing godly about that. God is the glue. God is the glue that they use to draw people, because people fear God and people fear the men of God, and people think the men of God are speaking for God. So if you fear God, if you think these are men of God that are leading you, and if you think these men are speaking for God, then it is easy then to mislead you into being bad, into being evil, into being immoral. And that is what we have. And what I tell people all the time, and this I tell folks who follow the church all the time, there are good churches out there that are doing positive things. I'm not a humanist myself, so I don't follow religion or believe in religion. I accept religion. I help religion, those folks that are religious. And why do I help those folks that are religious? Because, again, some of them are doing good work. And if they're doing good work, of course I support them. If I meet a pastor that is going into the neighborhood and trying to make boys better men, I'm going to support that pastor. I don't care that he's preaching some sort of a thing that I don't necessarily believe in. What he's ultimately doing is good, and I will support that. What evangelicals are doing is inherently evil. In their support for Donald Trump, that their kids are going to use their support for Donald Trump as probative in their own values You know, I ask some of my evangelical friends at Starbucks sometimes, I'll say, like, hey, how does your kid feel about that? One of them actually introduced me to his kid, and I could see that the kid was a little bit apprehensive in talking because the kid doesn't believe the crap. The parent wants them to, but he doesn't. But there's still a group of people, again, who believe, who fear God, who believe their pastors are men of God, who believe their pastors are speaking for God, and as such, they think where the pastor leads them is godly. We have to bring down, we have to destroy their faith in evil. In other words, those people that you're around are good people. They're very good people. But because of their religion and how it works, it allows them to follow that which is evil. And if we can make a better pastor, we would make better people. I know this to some that may sound sort of like, is that heresy? Is that no? It's not. The heresy is what the evangelical leaders are doing right now. It is what they're doing right now to their own people. It is that they're making their people evil. It's that they're making their people not nice people. It's that they're making their people do all the bad things. And if we can extricate the pastors from their people, the goodness inherent in human beings would come out. But let me continue with the article. Phelps reveals an inconvenient truth about the white evangelical. Trump did not create the pathology. He is just their medium and is a reflection of them. The Trump era then does not create a new problem for evangelicals and their image, he says. It's simply casting a very bright light on what has always been there, at least for the past 40 years or so. It is questionable the extent to which evangelicals ever held much moral authority in the first place, appealing to some pure form of the faith beyond its supposed political corruption, beyond the racism, xenophobia, nationalism, and the like that even critics of paper over isn't the way to go. It's not the way to go. Not only do such appeals, meaning the appeals to these evangelical specific leaders, represent little more than nostalgia-laden theological desires that have little to do with what goes on the ground, but they also ignore the fact that the line between religion and politics is flimsy at best, if not entirely non-existent. Evangelicalism, in its current manifestation, isn't a religion that hasn't been corrupted by its entry into politics. The substance of that politics has been clearly on display for some time now. Trump and his evangelical allies didn't invent it. They only exacerbated it. What are we saying? The moral majority has always been there, or since Jerry Falwell established it. I think it was the early '80s, if I recall that correctly. Jerry Falwell and now his son. But these folks have been around. I mean, if we want to take it further, we can actually say that let's not forget that a lot of the civil rights problems were exacerbated by the support it had in the church. After all, if the church supports all these bad things, and you believe the church is there to support you, and you think the church is inherently good, then these bad things seem like good things to you. That is a psychology very few want to accept. One of the regions, I tell you a quick story and then I'll finish up the blog about religion. When I was back at the University of Texas, there's a religious sect called Maranatha Christian Centers. Maranatha Christian Centers was it pretty much had a pastor, an assistant pastor, a musical band that played contemporary music. I was a part of the band as well. We played contemporary music. It was like living the word of the Bible to the T, and I partook in that for 6 months. And in the process, we played guitar and all of that. But as you know, I've always been also an activist. And even while I pursued church and religion and all of that on the campus of the University of Texas, when it was time to march on campus, I was there. When it was time to support the divestment of our assets from South Africa, I was there. In other words, we were wearing our berets and our boots, and we were out there marching with the banners on the West Campus, or on the North Campus and the West Campus at the University of Texas. Well, one day I went over to my pastor and I told my pastor, hey, we're having this big march on campus and I'd like our church to be a part of it. Because after all, we stand for goodness, we stand for equality, we stand for all that is good. And my pastor said, Berto, I have something to tell you. And he took me to the back of the church and we sat down and we just having a little decent conversation. And he said, this church, we don't do that. And then I said, well, we have to do that. I'm telling this pastor, I'm about 19, 20 years old. He's about 32 years old. And I'm telling this pastor, we got to do it. This church has got to go out there and march. We got to go out there and support the cause. We got to get the University of Texas to divest its money from South Africa. And the pastor, eventually, with me going back and forth and making a whole lot of noise and me telling him why the goodness of the church requires us to do that, after I appealed to the morality of why the church should be there, he told me the thing that made me leave church altogether. He said, Berto, let me tell you something. Do you know that not once in the New Testament did Jesus ever speak out against slavery? And I'm like, what you talking about? And it's like, what you talking about, Willis? What do you mean Jesus never talked down slavery? Are you kidding me? I said, no, Egberto. In fact, there are passages in the Bible where he says, servants, honor thy masters. And he gave some other passages in there. And, I'm freaked out now because, we're proud people. And I'm in this church. And I'm asking this church to come out there and march with us because we have to change the system. We have to make a difference. We have to make this an egalitarian society. And we have to support that not only in the United States, but throughout the world. We can't have our brothers and sisters in South Africa living under apartheid in that situation. We just can't have that. We just can't have that. And then the pastor tells me that. And I'm freaked out now. I'm 20 years old or so, 19, 20 years. I think I was 20 years old. And I'm like, that's not possible. I read the whole damn New Testament just to find out that the pastor was right. Now, when that occurred, I finally said, you know what? And at that time I was adamant. I just thought nobody should be Christians. Nobody should be in religion. As I grew up, I matured and realized that there's a lot more to religion than just the way I think. The way I think as a humanist is I'll do everything to move humans forward. I know nothing about the afterlife. I know nothing about what comes after. And I believe in no man who's going to tell me he knows more than I do with regards to something that's invisible to most. And that's the reason I took the stance. I know everybody won't, shouldn't, can't take that stance, but that's the stance that I took. But what I learned in the process is that little things can make a difference in people's psychology. That word that the pastor gave me could have taken me into one of two places. Where it has taken me now to become a humanist who work towards what's good for human beings, or made me an insular person within the religion who've accepted that Jesus Christ had no problem with certain citizens being second class, and as such, support it. I mean, that's why you can still have black Mormons, right? In as much as the church devalued blackness, you could still have black Mormons. in as much as the church devalued other sects, indigenous people, and I'm talking about other churches, you still had these indigenous people in other churches. Life is a lot more complicated than I would have wanted it to be, and I accept that now. But that is also one of the reasons why I do give evangelicals a pass. That is also one of the reasons why I think there's always hope for absolutely everybody, no matter whether you remain a Christian or not, no matter what you do. Because again, if we simply think going forward what's best for everybody, irrespective of what religion you're in, that would get effectuated, if you will. To end the blog with one paragraph. It is important that evangelical relatives and friends read this. It just may give them pause as they examine their own morality. Maybe they will begin to see what the rest of the world see. Maybe they will realize the irreparable damage they are doing to Christianity. That pastor of mine, he did irreparable damage to Christianity in my eyes, for me, not for everybody else. But he did irreparable damage for Christianity for me. Because he told me that I grew up a Christian. For all that I thought Christianity meant, it didn't. Based on what he said and based on what I then read in the Bible. Others may interpret it to mean otherwise, and that is fine. But that is what it has done. It is my goal in life now, my goal in life, irrespective of what religion you are, Christian, Muslim, or whomever, to say let's all work together and extricate all that is bad. But you know, this is the time for me to run to my page and see and start talking to my folks on the page and see what you have to tell me, or see whether you need to scold me or tell me you agree with me or tell me you disagree with me. But also, I'd like to ask you guys to give me a call at 646-716-5812. I would love to hear your opinion, whether you agree with me or not. In fact, I kind of love when you disagree with me because you force me to do some additional thinking. So give me a call at 646-716-5812. Again, that number is 646-716-5812. I would love to hear from more of you. Yesterday at KPFT, we had dozens of calls coming in. We actually, at the end, I thought we were going to completely run out of time and not get to all. So I started to short some of them. And there was one woman who called the station and said that I was a bit too short with her in getting her off before she was done. I don't know if that woman is listening today, but I apologize for doing that. We just had so many calls. I just couldn't, I really wanted to get everybody, absolutely everybody that took the time to call. I wanted to make sure that I answered your call. So if I was short, I apologize. Okay, let me now go and take care of what we have here. Let's see, let's see which ones are first. I'm not even sure which is it's the top or bottom. Sometimes it's the top, sometimes the bottom. Okay, Michael Rudin, the real deal with the devil image problem. Okay, I don't know what that is about, Michael Rudin, but I'll read it in detail a little later. Egberto, let me know. Okay, let's see what Rudin is saying. Let me know what you think about this for the next time. A Voice of Reason managed to make it onto MSNBC. Just 2 minutes of your time. Please don't skip. I'll tell you what. This is a long one. I'll get to it after I run down some other things, but I promise I will get to it. Michael Rudin also said, this transactional relationship bears repeating. Trump pushes, let's pushes forward their regressive conservative ideology into law, despite clearly not being one of them, and they throw their supposed morality into the gutter to get what they want politically. A record number of white evangelical Christians say they support President Donald Trump. According to a poll from the Public Religion Research Institute released on Thursday, 75% of white evangelicals said they had a favorable view of the president, and just 22% saying they had an unfavorable view. White evangelical men are the most likely of that group to back the president at 81%, while the women at 71%. You're right, that is pathetic. That is pathetic. And again, again, like I said, I try not to look at that at the people themselves, just at the indoctrination. Okay, let's go to somebody else. Let's see. We have Daniel Ladeau. Daniel Ladeau says, sexual misconduct is now the sole sin of Republicans. Oh, really? I don't think so. Sexual misconduct is the sole sin of whoever is promoting or doing sexual misconduct. And then he laughs out loud, Daniel Ladeau, a communist talking about morality, rich. Ladeau, first of all, I'm not a communist at all. I don't believe in the government taking over all sources of production at all. So let me be frank, because a lot of right-wingers, to end the discussion and to stunt the discussion when they don't have an intellectual ground to stand on, the first thing they would say is, you're a communist. And then you're supposed to put your tail between your legs, shut up, and hide for the fear that somebody's going to call you a communist. I don't fear anybody calling me anything. You can call me anything. And by that I mean anything. The great thing about the way I process information is words are of little value if they have no substance. So when people call me the N-word, I smile and ask them if they have had a bad day. When people call me names, I smile and I ask them, well, I hope things go better for you. You challenge me intellectually, you challenge what I'm talking about, I'll talk to you, and there are times that you're going to challenge me intellectually and you're going to beat me. You're going to say, and just like I admitted to a couple of callers yesterday, they enhance this program. My callers enhance this program. When I came out with those 5 points in a manner that covered every demographic in this country without once using any demographical information, but everybody saw themselves within those 5 points. I had somebody who called and said, but what about the person who's going to see it this way? To which I had to say, my friend, you know what? You're absolutely right. I will modify the text to reflect exactly what you said, because my caller had additional information to put onto these 5 points that we were talking about. So, as you see, Mr. Ladeau, calling me a communist doesn't mean much. The reason I'm explaining it and not just ignoring it is that a lot of folks that are going to be listening to this or reading this there are going to be over 4,000 people that are going to see this and read this on Facebook. I don't want them to see the word communist and so, oh my God, have to hide. I want folks to say, it doesn't matter what anybody calls you. It doesn't matter verbally what anybody tells you. It only matters what you are going to handle or talk about intellectually, something of substance that makes sense. Now, since you mentioned the word communist, let me first tell you, Webster has some bad definitions, because if you look up the word communist and socialist in Webster, you'll see the same definition. You'll see that it's the government controlling all sources of production. False. Communist is the government controlling all sorts of production. Democratic socialism, or however you want to call it, that is not the case. The democratic socialism, believe it or not, America is a very light democratic socialist state. Denmark is a very strong democratic socialist state. Denmark has a much happier index than the United States. They have higher productivity, and they have higher... There are a whole lot of numbers that you can go through in Denmark where they're higher than the United States. And you have to say that if our methods were that much better than the rest of the world, or than the rest of these countries, that it should be reflected in our population. But as it turns out, our population is less educated. I have a friend who is in Europe right now, and what she says, it's amazing that when we are in the United States, we are insular. We think that the world revolves around us, when there are more of the world outside of us, much more of the world outside of us that goes on. And she sat down around the table. She's an immigrant to the United States, an American citizen, a naturalized American citizen. But she's over there in Europe, And what they've seen over there, and she sent her blogs over to indicate what's happening out there. And I find it amusing because what she says in her blogs is that this other world, to them, America is one of two things: inconsequential and losing it. After all, they've elected Donald Trump. Think about that. Think about that. So while we sit down here and pat ourselves on the back, while we sit down here and just think the world revolves around us, take a look at some of her pictures. Well, her blog isn't up yet, but it'll be up when it's pretty soon. It'll show a different world. A world where airports are much more modern. A world where free enterprise is flourishing at the same time that they have what's equivalent to Medicare for all. They'll show you places where the parent doesn't have to worry that if they go to work, their kids are going to be taken care of. They'll show you all these things. And the countries are doing fine. And the freedom reigns. And they have more vacation time to do the things that they want to do. Think about that. While we stay here uneducated, not knowing what's going on in the rest of the world, and we allow a religious fringe to control the entire country through one person that doesn't have neither the intellect or the wherewithal to be the leader of the country. That is the reality that America has put itself into. And the rest of the world doesn't see it. The rest of the world sees us now as a group of people, many uneducated, with a bomb, which they have to appease us because we just might get crazy and use that big bad military that we have, that we spend most of our money on. So in other words, the rest of the world, they do fear us. They do. They are concerned about us. Yeah, they are. Because we have that big, big, badass military that can beat any military in the world, and it's under the dominion of a guy named Donald Trump. Think about that. It is crazy. Let me get back to my to see what else people are saying here. Bear with me. Let me re-cue it here, because I would love to see if Ledo had an answer to that, because Ledo loves to call out those buzzwords and then run. Ledo, did you run again? Let's see. All right, Daniel Ledo, careful. No, that I read already. Let's see. Come on. Scroll. Okay, we have. Okay, I don't have a lot. America is a Christian majority. Let's see. That is from Michael Rudin again. Did I read that one yet? Let's see. Okay, I don't think I read that one. America is a Christian majority nation, not a Christian theocratic nation. We were born with ideals of secularism. Convincing those believers will take some effort, starting with a bit of ridicule. Evangelicals have entered into a transactional relationship with Trump, a deal with the devil in the parlance, seeking to push forward their conservative bigotry into law using a man that's clearly not one of them. I thought I read something that sounded like that before. I think that was with the transactional relationship. So yeah, I mean, and so that is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. Bitter pill to swallow. Yes, it's a bitter pill to swallow. Okay, Berto misread. Daniel Ledo, careful. Sexual misconduct is not. Oh, I misread it. So Ledo was saying it is not the sole purview of Republicans. I know, you're absolutely right, Ledo. But here's the reality. It is the thing about it is, you don't see progressives going around the place judging people because somebody is sleeping with somebody else. That is not how they roll. They don't roll that way. They say live and let live. But the puritanical right wing, they love to call out those things. And if they're going to call out those things, they better be able to live it. And that's the problem. Rarely are they able to live what they preach. And if you can't live what you preach, then what's the point? Anyhow, folks, no calls yet. 646-716-5812. How comes on, well, I guess that's because that one is on FM radio. But yesterday we had, I don't know, several dozen calls. Yesterday was crazy with all the calls that came in. But we had some great callers who made the blog of the week a better blog of the week. And that's, like I told them yesterday at KPFT, we have absolutely the best listeners. And even here on Blog Talk Radio and Facebook Live, we have the best listeners. Because you know what? Even these comments that you put out here, I mean, you really know what you're talking about. So, folks, I would like to ask you if you want to say something, if either write it down into the post on Facebook Live, or go ahead and give us a call at 646-716-5812, 646-716-5812. Now, you know, I can do soliloquies, very long soliloquies, but I much rather have more of you call in. Would be great if you called in like yesterday, which, again, like I said, we had several dozen people call in. If you're just joining the show, please, today's show was about evangelicals, and we spoke about evangelicals. This is nothing new, really, that evangelicals have always been this way, but Donald Trump just presented them with a medium. Donald Trump was just a reflection of them to the nth degree. And in that regards, they got the exposure that they've been longing for. We also discussed, based on the article written by Dr. Phelps, that the reality is that the evangelicalism is not really a religion; it's a social and political movement that has a religious facade on it. That is, what's the word that I want to say? That is framed as a religion. That is framed as something moral. But there's absolutely nothing moral about evangelicalism, and we have to first accept that. And after we accept that, that gives us the impetus that we need. I don't want to say attack it, because that's not the right word. That gives us the impetus we need to challenge them. And in the process of challenging them, many of those who follow it, again, look, there are thinkers that are evangelicals. I mean, they are evangelicals, but they're thinkers. And the thing about it is, the people that we want to hit first are those people that are thinking. Those people that are going to say, take them out of that fog. Because don't forget, their pastors are likely just like the pastor that I had when I was 19 or 20 years old. Egberto, Jesus Christ never spoke out against slavery. Egberto, we don't do that. Egberto, we don't do social justice. We sing and we praise the Lord. We sing and we praise the Lord. Anything that happens on the outside is on the outside. Everything that happens on the outside is on the outside. We cannot allow that type of stuff to be what's running our country right now. Well, we're coming to the end of the show. Let me do one last read of the Facebook Live page. And then I'm going to then go to my last ask of the day today. We only had two. I don't know why. I forgot to stop in the middle and make that ask. But let me go ahead and see. We have, let's see. Rudin says, okay, let's see what he says here. Rudin, thank you for all the stuff that you post. You make the show interesting with a whole lot of the stuff that you write. I'll have to post more quotes, remembering you're not going to click on a link during the show. On the world stage, America is seen as the biggest threat to world peace. On the metric, we are triple the rating of the next highest contenders. On 30th December 2013, the BBC had reported of poll this year, first meaning here the first time when Gallup agreed to include 3 questions submitted by listeners to BBC's radio for today's program. And one of those 3 listeners asked questions was phrasing, this is a kind of hard to read. The way that this open-ended question, 67,000 respondents found 65 countries, was, which country do you think is the greatest threat to peace in the world? 24% of the respondents worldwide volunteered that the U.S. was the greatest threat to the world. Second was Pakistan, volunteered by 8%. China was third, And who was fourth? I can't quite. Afghanistan, Iran, Israel, and I'm going down in that order, Korea. So as you can see, we are considered one of the most dangerous countries in the world. We have a tendency to believe everybody else is dangerous. But a lot of folks around the world, they fear us, and more so now than ever because we have Donald Trump, who leads the biggest army. And Senor Rudnin, you can put the post in there. Generally, if I can get to the post, I will. Sometimes I get a little bit wordy. You can always ask me in there to comment on some other issues, and I always take on your request. I'm looking to see if there's anybody else who commented today. Let's see. I don't think we have anybody else. But anyhow, we're moving on now to my last ask of the day. I want to remind all of you folks that Politics Done Right is a progressive show. It's a progressive show that is intent on bringing you. We bring you a lot of different kind of folks, right? We brought you journalists, as in Crystal Ball and others. We brought you those that are running in primaries on the state level, like Tamara Johnson and a couple others. I can't recall their names right now. We brought you Congress folks that are running on a national level. And we brought you the woman who's a leader, who's leading her race. I think Daily Kos is supporting her as well in Ohio. And we've also brought folks like earlier this week we had the pollster on from the Quinnipiac University poll, the assistant director of the poll. We brought him on to the show and asked him a few questions. So we do a whole lot of that, and we when we travel, we also create the blogs, a lot of blogs at egbertowillies.com that covers events that are occurring today, and we cover some events real time. All of that for the longest time. For the last 6 years, we've been doing that simply with support from our website. Our website was the sole supporter of this venture. As the plutocracy, as our corporatocracy has changed, and though some of you have heard this before, some haven't, and that's why I repeat it. As the corporatocracy has come in, they found many reasons to change their algorithms, etc. And the algorithms hit our websites very hard. What happened is we lost 90% of our revenue. So whereas we did everything for free and we never really particularly asked for subscriptions or anything, we didn't do that because, again, we were making all our income from our website, from ads on our website that was able to generate all the things that we needed to do for the progressive movement. Now we can't. So what we're asking is we need to get hundreds of subscribers to Politics Done Right, and that will support Politics Done Right, the Liberal Network, Single Payer Healthcare Now, egbertowillies.com, and several other websites that we have out there that's pushing the progressive message and that's bringing that's highlighting progressives and that's giving progressives who otherwise would not have any exposure. That's our goal. Our goal is in 2018, we're going to put a whole lot out there, and we're going to be doing a whole lot in the background by getting exposure to progressives and making sure people know who these people are. The people at MSNBC and all these guys are not going to touch. And we are going to bring those to you. We have been bringing those to you. So we ask you to go ahead and support Politics Done Right and others. I always tell folks that I don't ask you to do what I don't do. I support several of these types of programs: Op-Ed News, Daily Kos, Democratic Underground, Coffee Party USA, HCDP, and several others. There are at least 10 of them that I support, and these are little dollar support for all these progressive rags that we know need to stay in existence, because what we do together, all these rags, when I call them rags, what I mean is I mean radio shows, I mean all the radio shows, blogs, websites. By us supporting each other, we amplify the message. In other words, 1 + 1 isn't equal 2 when we all work together. 1 + 1 = 3. 1 + 1 = 4. Because each of us share each other's messages. Each of us inform each other. When we meet at Netroots, as we're going to meet in New Orleans this year, many of us will meet in New Orleans and discuss how we further move along. We will get together and come up with methods and ideas on how we are going to get that progressive message out. But in doing so, we depend on you as well. And so we're asking you, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, please go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright, patreon.com/politicsdoneright, and be a subscriber. Subscribe. It's very little. It's really very little, and you will feel good that you know you are helping the progressive message move forward. You are doing good knowing you're helping the progressive message go forward from folks that are not only altruistic, but folks that are really out there doing the job. We're at the end of the show. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. You guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.
1, 2, 3, 4.